She is one of the brightest women Hollywood has ever known. But behind the glow, Sarah Jessica Parker has lived a life shaped by battles the world never saw. Before the fame, before the red carpets, before Carrie Bradshaw became a cultural force, she was a little girl, fighting cold nights, broken homes, rejection, heartbreak, and losses that would have crushed a weaker spirit. This is not the story of a star. It is the story of a survivor who built an empire from nothing, carried her family's struggles on her back, endured love that nearly broke her, lost the people who steadied her, and still rose again with grace. If you think you know Sarah Jessica Parker, what you're about to learn will change that forever. Before the world learned her name or connected her face to New York City, Sarah Jessica Parker was already living through the kind of pressure that shapes a person long before fame arrives. People today see her as a symbol of confidence, fashion, success, and charm. They see the bright smile, the strong voice, the elegant presence, and the long list of achievements. But behind that shine is a woman who learned early that life does not hand out strength for free. Her strength was earned piece by piece, through years of uncertainty, fear, responsibility, and quiet battles no camera ever captured. Her public image and her private reality have always existed like two sides of a coin, connected yet completely different. And understanding her story means understanding both sides equally. The world knows her as an icon, someone who changes rooms simply by walking into them. She represents independence for many women, hope for people who grew up with very little, and proof that a difficult beginning does not decide a person's ending. But that radiant image did not appear on its own. It came from years of learning how to carry herself, even when she felt overwhelmed. It came from learning to stay polite when she was nervous, to stay focused when she was tired, and to stay gentle even when life around her was harsh. People often mistake calmness for ease, but in her case, calmness was built through survival. She grew into her confidence because she needed it, not because life was kind to her. From the start, her life showed that some of the brightest, strongest people come from the darkest, most uncertain beginnings. This idea runs through her entire journey. While some children grow up worrying about school or friends, she grew up worrying about money, heat, electricity, and whether her mother was okay. While some children were encouraged to dream, she was encouraged to stay realistic. That contrast, that early awareness of responsibility, shaped her in ways no one could see from the outside. When people look at her now, they see the glow, not the shadows behind it. They see the success, not the sacrifices that built it. Public perception often freezes celebrities into one image, making them appear simpler than they truly are. For Sarah, people saw the glamorous roles, the stylish outfits, the awards, and the red carpets. They saw the confidence of Carrie Bradshaw and believed Sarah's real life must be just as effortless. But fame, especially for women, often hides more than it reveals. The truth is that every moment of celebration carried memories of earlier struggle. Every triumph came with a quiet understanding that nothing in her life had ever been guaranteed. She knew what it meant to work for stability because she had grown up without it. Her rise seemed smooth from the outside, but it was never smooth from within. Every step in her life connected back to the lessons she learned as a child. Stay humble, stay prepared, work hard, expect nothing to come easily, and never let fear stop you. She carried these lessons into every audition, every rehearsal, every job, and every challenge. The world applauded her talent, but very few people understood the emotional cost behind it. She learned to smile through exhaustion, to show grace when she felt pressure, and to continue performing even when life outside the spotlight felt heavy. Understanding her story requires more than listing events. This is not just a timeline of achievements or a record of career milestones. It is a journey through the emotional structure that built her from childhood to adulthood. Each part of her life connects to the next, like threads in a fabric. Her early struggles shaped her work ethic. Her early fears shaped her resilience. Her early losses shaped her compassion. Her early responsibilities shaped her ability to handle fame without losing herself. The emotional formation behind her success is the real story, and it is far more meaningful than the glamorous roles she became known for. There are parts of her life that the public never sees. The uncertainty she felt as a young girl, the stress she carried while trying to help her family, the pressure of supporting herself at a young age, the exhaustion of long days in New York City, the emotional cost of early breaktests, heartbreaks, and the weight of friendships that ended painfully. These unseen experiences built the version of Sarah the world eventually met. The story of her life is held together not by fame, but by the endurance she developed long before anyone knew who she was. The storms in her life did not appear after she became a star. They began much earlier. Long before awards, interviews, and global recognition, she was already learning how to protect herself from disappointment, how to stay hopeful during uncertainty, and how to keep working despite fear. These early storms became the foundation of her strength as an adult. They prepared her for the intensity of fame, for the pressure of being a public figure, and for the emotional challenges that came with love, friendship, motherhood, and loss. Many people admire her success, but very few know the depth of the experiences that shaped it. This journey is full of layers, emotional scars, private victories, quiet fears, and personal choices made in silence. Her life story moves through poverty, struggle, unexpected opportunities, heartbreak, healing, and grief. It shows how a person can rise even when the world feels heavy, how strength can form slowly through years of endurance, and how a life can transform far beyond its beginnings. Her story reminds us that strength does not come from ease, it grows from difficulty. And this is only the beginning, because long before the spotlight claimed her, Sarah faced a childhood so harsh it could have extinguished her future before it even began. Some children enter the world already held by comfort and security, but Sarah Jessica Parker arrived in a place where survival came before anything else. She was born in Nelsonville, Ohio, a small working-class town where families often struggled to make ends meet. Her earliest memories were shaped by tight budgets, cold mornings, and a house that could not keep winter out. The walls were thin, the floors were cold, and every harsh season reminded them of how little they had. There were times when the electricity was cut because the bills could not be paid. Nights were spent wrapped in extra blankets, hoping the heat would return. Meals were simple and sometimes stretched so thin that everyone had to accept less than they needed. It was not a childhood filled with toys or comfort, but one centered on making it through each week. Her parents' marriage was already strained, and the pressure of financial hardship made everything worse. When she was still very young, the marriage broke apart, leaving her mother alone with several children and too many responsibilities. The separation changed everything. Sarah was old enough to feel the tension, but too young to understand why it was happening. What she understood clearly, even as a small child, was that stability was gone. Her father became a distant presence, appearing less and less until he faded almost completely from her daily life. Her mother, Barbara, carried the weight of the home, working constantly to keep the family standing. A few years later, her mother met and married Paul Forstay, a steady and hard-working man who stepped into the chaos without hesitation. He brought 4 children of his own, and suddenly, the family expanded into a blended household of 8 kids. The house they lived in was small and crowded, with shared bedrooms, mattresses on floors, and very little personal space. Shoes were mismatched, clothing was passed down through multiple siblings, and every decision from buying food to fixing something broken required careful planning. Privacy did not exist, and quiet moments were rare. The home was full, loud, and busy, but also marked by constant pressure to keep everything together. Growing up in such conditions forced Sarah to understand adult problems long before she should have. She listened to whispered conversations about overdue bills, unexpected expenses, and the fear that they might not make it through another month. She watched her mother return home tired, worried, and stretched thin. She saw how hard Paul worked to provide for such a large family. Even though the adults tried to protect the children from the worst of their struggles, Sarah felt the weight anyway. It taught her to stay quiet, to avoid adding to the stress, and to become responsible in ways most children never have to be. The family moved often during those years, sometimes because they needed a cheaper place, sometimes because circumstances changed too quickly to stay settled. Each move meant new schools, new neighbors, and new routines. For a child, starting over again and again can be confusing and emotionally draining. Sarah learned to pack quickly, leave friends behind, without complaint, and adjust to unfamiliar surroundings. These moves shaped her ability to adapt, but they also created a sense of instability that followed her for many years. She grew used to uncertainty, even when she longed for a stable place to call home. Because the house was crowded and money was scarce, Sarah learned early how to make herself small, physically and emotionally. She didn't demand attention, she didn't ask for extras, and she didn't expect life to be easy. Instead, she observed, she listened. She studied the way adults handled stress and the way her older siblings navigated responsibility. These early experiences taught her resilience and silence, the ability to endure discomfort without complaint. They also shaped her sensitivity, making her aware of other people's feelings and struggles. But inside that difficult environment, something unexpected happened. She found a path that allowed her to escape, even briefly, from the noise and pressure of her daily life. Her mother enrolled her in dance lessons and later in singing and acting classes. These activities became more than hobbies, they became a lifeline. In dance, she found discipline. In singing, she found expression. In acting, she found a chance to step into other worlds, even if only for a few hours. These small beginnings opened a door to possibilities far beyond Ohio. They gave her something to look forward to, something she could hold on to when life felt too heavy. These early exposures to the arts also revealed something important. She had talent, not just interest, but real ability. Teachers noticed her focus, her determination, and her natural presence. While other children attended lessons for fun, Sarah approached them with a seriousness that came from knowing how much this opportunity mattered. She didn't waste time or take anything for granted. Every class was a chance to learn, to improve, and to imagine a future different from the one she was born into. Her childhood was full of challenges, poverty, instability, emotional strain, and responsibilities far beyond her age. Yet these hardships shaped the core of who she would become. They built her empathy, teaching her to see beyond appearances. They strengthened her work ethic, showing her that nothing comes without effort. They sharpened her sensitivity, allowing her to connect deeply with others. And they sparked the quiet fire inside her, the belief that she could rise if she kept working and kept moving forward. As she grew older, the contrast between her difficult home life and her growing passion for performing became clearer. She began to understand that if she wanted a different life, she would have to take risks, big ones. Opportunities were starting to appear, but they required leaving home, leaving Ohio, and stepping into a world far bigger and more demanding than anything she had ever known. And soon, that moment would come. Because escaping poverty meant leaving home behind alone at an age where most children were still learning who they were. New York is a place people dream about, but it is also a place that tests those dreams with a level of pressure most never imagine. When Sarah Jessica Parker arrived there as a teenager, they didn't step into comfort, opportunity, or stability. She stepped into a world where nothing came easily, where survival required focus, discipline, and the willingness to push through fear. She lived in shared rooms, borrowed apartments, and small spaces that rarely felt like home. Sometimes she stayed with family members, sometimes with other young performers, and sometimes in places offered temporarily by people trying to help. There was no steady routine, no long-term security, and no sense of settling in. She took whatever space she could find, and she learned to live lightly, knowing she might have to pack and move again at any moment. While trying to build a life in the city, she attended the Professional Children's School, a place designed for young people who worked in theater, television, or film. The idea sounded glamorous, but her reality was far from it. She carried textbooks between rehearsals, memorized lines while waiting for trains, and tried to complete assignments in dressing rooms or backstage corners. She was constantly balancing school and work, and neither area allowed her to rest. Her days started early and ended late, and she had very little help. She learned to be responsible because she didn't have another choice. Money was extremely tight during those years. She wasn't earning enough to live comfortably, and she didn't come from a family who could support her financially. Long commutes became a normal part of her life, and she often studied while standing on crowded subways. Meals were whatever she could afford. Half of a sandwich saved from the day before, cheap soup, or an apple carried around until it bruised. She never complained, but she often went to bed hungry. She didn't tell her mother how hard it was because he didn't want to worry her. She understood that her family was already stretched thin, and she didn't want to add another burden. Auditions were a constant part of her routine, and they were never easy. She waited in long lines with other young performers who came with neatly prepared outfits, supportive parents, and a confidence that came from being encouraged. Sarah often stood there alone, holding worn sheet music or scripts that had been folded too many times. Casting directors sometimes ignored her before she even walked into the room. They told her she wasn't tall enough, stylish enough, or striking enough. These rejections cut deeply, especially because she was still just a child trying to navigate an adult industry. But rejection did not stop her. Each time she heard no, she learned to stand a little taller, to work a little harder, and to treat each new audition like another chance to prove herself. Emotionally, the years in New York were heavy. She missed her family constantly. She missed the noise of her siblings or the warmth of home, even the crowded small spaces she once thought she wanted to escape. Managing money at such a young age was stressful, and she had to keep track of every dollar she spent. She also had to handle adult responsibilities without the emotional tools that adults usually develop over time. She learned how to navigate professional spaces where she was expected to behave maturely, even when she felt uncertain or overwhelmed. She handled contracts, schedules, and expectations that were far bigger than any teenager should face. Her early roles helped her stay afloat. She performed in The Innocents, which gave her early stage experience, and then in the Broadway production of Annie, where she stepped into a world of demanding rehearsals and strict routines. These jobs were difficult, but they taught her discipline and commitment. Touring productions took her from town to town, where she slept in budget hotels and studied whenever she could. These experiences didn't just build her career, they built her resilience. She learned how to show up on time, deliver her best, and keep going, no matter how tired she felt. Her first real breakthrough came with the television series Square Pegs. For the first time, a role allowed her true personality to shine through. Patty Green was quirky, awkward, relatable, and honest qualities that Sarah naturally carried. Audiences connected with her immediately. It was the first sign that Hollywood might finally be ready to notice her. It wasn't fame yet, but it was recognition, a small but powerful turning point. From there, more opportunities followed. She appeared in Footloose, playing a fun and spirited character who brought energy to every scene. The same year, she took on a more emotional role in Firstborn, proving that she could handle depth and seriousness. These early film roles helped her transition from being just another young actress to someone the industry started paying attention to. Her face was becoming familiar, and her talent was becoming undeniable. Through all of this, one truth defined her journey. Talent was her currency, and survival was her motivation. She didn't have a safety net. She didn't have wealthy parents or connections in the industry. What she had was skill, determination, discipline, and the ability to push through exhaustion. She worked because she had to, and she succeeded because she refused to give up. New York shaped her in ways that would stay with her forever. It taught her independence, self-control, emotional strength, and the reality that dreams only come true when backed by relentless effort. The city tested her, challenged her, and forced her to grow quickly. But it also prepared her for what would come next, because the fame she was climbing toward wasn't a blessing, it was an emotional battlefield waiting for her. Success brought Sarah Jessica Parker into a world she had never imagined, but it also placed her inside a space she could not step away from. When she was cast as Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City in 1998, she felt immediately that this role would change everything. She knew it was special the moment she read the script. Carrie was funny, emotional, brave, confused, honest, and flawed in ways that made her feel real. Sarah could see parts of herself in the character, and she sensed that millions of women would feel the same. Connection. What she didn't know at that moment was how deeply the role would shape her life, both in ways that lifted her and in ways that weighed heavily on her for years. The show quickly became a cultural force. It wasn't just entertainment. It became a new language for talking about identity, womanhood, independence, friendships, dating, financial struggles, and personal growth. Carrie's world, New York City, designer shoes, late-night conversations, hopes, heartbreaks, became symbols that people across the globe felt attached to. Women related to Carrie's confusion, her bravery, her mistakes, and her desire to create a meaningful life. They saw themselves in her stories. The show also changed how people viewed New York. The city became a character itself, bright, unpredictable, exciting, and full of possibility. It inspired many women to dream differently about their own futures. But behind the scenes, life was far more demanding than people realized. Sarah worked 14 to 16 hours a day, often 6 days a week. She would start early in the morning with hair and makeup, film scenes throughout the day, change outfits repeatedly, rehearse lines, shoot again, and end long after the sun went down. Her feet blistered from the endless high heels, her body ached from the physical strain. She barely slept, and sometimes she went weeks without a true day off. Even though the work brought success, the pressure to maintain the show's high standards was exhausting. She pushed through because she cared about the work, and she didn't want to disappoint the people who believed in her. The emotional toll was even heavier. As the show grew, the public began to treat her appearance as a topic for judgment. Tabloids criticized her facial features, her clothing, her weight, and even her age. They compared her nose to objects meant to embarrass her. They wrote harsh comments about her body. Magazine covers praised her one day and insulted her the next. While she tried to ignore it, the cruelty still hurt. She later admitted that some of the comments were so personal and unkind that they stayed with her for years. Fame exposed her to a level of judgment no one can prepare for. Fame was a double-edged sword. On one side, fans adored her. Women approached her to say Carrie had helped them through breakups, loneliness, or confusion about life. Fans cried when they met her, thanking her for representing them on screen. She appreciated their love deeply. But on the other side was the media, ruthless, invasive, and often cruel. They followed her everywhere, photographed her children, created false stories, and treated her private life as public property. The same fame that lifted her up also made her feel exposed and unprotected. Carrie Bradshaw became both her greatest triumph and her heaviest burden. People loved Carrie so intensely that they began to confuse the character with the actress. They assumed Sarah was exactly like Carrie. They expected her to dress like her, walk like her, talk like her, and think like her. It became difficult for her to separate her identity from the character she played. While she was grateful for the role, she sometimes felt trapped inside it, as if the world only saw her through Carrie's image. She once said it was strange to become famous for playing a fictional version of herself that people believed was completely real. Financially, the role changed her life in unbelievable ways. As the show grew more successful, her salary rose rapidly. By season 4, she was earning more than $3 million per episode, a groundbreaking figure for a woman in television at that time. She eventually became the highest-paid actress on American TV. The success was overwhelming, and so was the responsibility that came with it. She understood how unusual it was for someone who grew up in poverty to suddenly earn that kind of money, and she didn't take it for granted. But even with financial success, the emotional cost of fame was still heavy. The Sex and the City movies pushed her fame even further. The first movie earned more than $415 million, and she received a massive paycheck of around $15 million. The sequel, despite poor reviews, earned nearly $300 million and raised her earnings again, reaching around $20 million. The movies made her one of the most financially successful actresses in the world. But with that success came suffocating pressure, higher expectations, more judgment, and even deeper scrutiny of her personal life. Every outfit, interview, and public appearance became something people analyzed and criticized. And as the world celebrated the glamour of Carrie Bradshaw, Sarah felt the cage forming around her. She loved the show, but she also struggled with the feeling that she had become locked into one version of herself. It was difficult to escape the image people expected. She felt proud, but also overwhelmed. The character that had opened doors for her had also created limits she could not easily break. The brighter her career became, the more complicated her emotional world grew. The success she had worked so hard for brought challenges she could never have predicted. Because even as she reached the height of her fame, the brightest chapter of her career was quietly sowing the seeds of her deepest personal heartbreak. Some storms in Hollywood don't come from enemies. They come from people you once cared about, worked with, and shared history with. For many years, the world believed that Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall were as close in real life as Carrie Bradshaw and Samantha Jones were on screen. Their characters had a bond that felt real, full of loyalty, humor, and honesty. Fans saw them as a symbol of strong female friendship, the kind that survives heartbreak, disagreements, and life changes. But off-screen, the reality was far more complicated. While they're on-screen, the relationship looked effortless. Their real lives carried a quiet distance that grew slowly over time. The early cracks began during the first seasons of Sex and the City. Sarah was hired as the clear lead and was also an executive producer, which meant she earned more. Kim believed the cast should be treated as equals. It wasn't about jealousy, it was about fairness in her eyes. Hollywood has its own rules, and pay is often tied to who the show centers around, but this difference, though professional, created tension that never fully went away. As the show grew more successful, the gap widened. Sarah's name appeared first in the credits, her interviews increased, and the media focused primarily on her. Kim felt her work was just as valuable, yet she wasn't recognized at the same level. Neither woman fought openly, but the pressure of these differences settled beneath the surface. By the later seasons, the tension was noticeable to people who worked closely with them. They were always professional. They delivered great performances, showed up on time, and treated the crew with respect. But the comfort that fans imagined never truly existed. They were colleagues, not sisters. They were respectful, but not close. They worked well together, but they didn't spend time together outside the set. Their relationship was built on the job, not friendship, and that's not unusual in Hollywood. But because the world fell in love with their characters, everyone expected that closeness to be real. The first big public sign of trouble came when discussions began about a third Sex and the City movie. Sarah was ready. Kristen Davis and Cynthia Nixon were ready. Fans were excited, but Kim declined to return. She said the script was not right for her, and that she wanted to move on from the role of Samantha Jones. This shocked fans and fueled rumors. People assumed it was about money, jealousy, or personal conflict. Some blamed Sarah, others blamed Kim. No one outside the cast truly knew the truth, but the world started focusing on their relationship more than ever. Then, in 2018, tragedy struck Kim's family. Her brother, Christopher Cattrall, passed away unexpectedly. Sarah, who understood loss deeply, reached out publicly with condolences. She left a kind comment on Kim's post, hoping to offer support during a heartbreaking moment. She believed it was the right thing to do, especially after working together for many years. But Kim responded with a message that shocked everyone. She wrote publicly that she did not need Sarah's support and accused her of behaving in a way that felt insincere. She said harsh words that spread quickly across the internet. For Sarah, the message was painful. She had never spoken badly about Kim, not in interviews, not in private conversations. She had always tried to be respectful, even when rumors painted her unfairly. When the public saw Kim's message, many people expected Sarah to defend herself or respond with anger. But she didn't. She didn't attack Kim, she didn't argue, and she didn't speak negatively about her. She simply said she was heartbroken. Her silence became its own statement. Instead of fighting back, she chose dignity. This moment revealed how fame could distort relationships. Small misunderstandings become headlines. Private discomfort turns into public drama. Wounds that might have stayed small in a normal life become huge under the pressure of global attention. Fame amplifies every disagreement and makes healing nearly impossible. The two women had years of professional tension, different expectations, and different emotional needs. The public, however, saw only two beloved characters, not two human beings with complicated feelings. When And Just Like That launched in 2021, without Kim, it confirmed what fans already feared. Carrie Bradshaw would walk through New York without Samantha Jones at her side. For many viewers, the absence was emotional. It felt like losing a part of the show's heart. Sarah acknowledged this in interviews. She praised Kim's work, saying she was proud of what they created together. She didn't blame her for not returning. She didn't reopen old wounds. She simply honored the past and carried the show forward. Behind the scenes, Sarah felt the absence deeply. She understood that some relationships are not meant to last, even if they once created something beautiful. She focused on supporting the Onivants, new cast, maintaining kindness, and continuing the story in a respectful way. Her reaction showed her character. She chose compassion over conflict, patience over ego, and peace over attention. Even when people asked her to explain what happened, she refused to speak badly about Kim. She said she hoped fans would understand that not all working relationships turn into friendships, and that was okay. In the end, their story is not about blame. It is about how pressure, years of silent tension, and the intensity of fame can create distance between people who once worked closely together. It is about how two strong, talented women experience the same journey in different ways, and it is about how one moment of public pain can overshadow years of private professionalism. Sarah's quiet strength through the entire situation showed who she truly is. She stayed grounded, respectful, and calm. She accepted what she could not change, carried the hurt privately, and moved forward with grace. She understood that not all bonds survive, even when the world wishes they would. But long before this friendship fell apart, another love story had already carved scars she would carry for the DNs the rest of her life. Some loves enter your life with so much excitement and energy that you don't notice how much they are taking from you. Others arrive quietly, offering peace where you once only knew turmoil. Sarah Jessica Parker lived both kinds of love, and the contrast shaped her deeply. In the early 1982, when she was still young and trying to find her place in the world, she met Robert Downey Jr. They were both rising actors, full of hope, passion, and big dreams. Their attraction was immediate. They were young, talented, and endlessly curious about life. Being together felt thrilling, like stepping into a world where anything was possible. But what felt exciting in the beginning slowly began to pull her into a life that demanded more from her than she could give. Their life together was simple on the outside. They lived in small apartments, sometimes barely furnished, eating cheap meals and surviving on ambition. They were often broke, but they didn't care at first. They had each other, and that felt enough. They rehearsed lines together, stayed up late talking about the future, and carried the belief that they would succeed if they just worked hard enough. But as Robert's career started to grow, so did his struggles. The pressure, fame, and emotional weight of the industry pushed him toward substance use. At first, Sarah tried to support him, hoping love could help him stay grounded. She cared about him deeply, and she believed in the good she saw in him. But addiction is not something a partner can fix, no matter how much love they give. Sarah soon found herself trying to keep him together, emotionally and physically. She worried constantly, waited for him on nights when he didn't come home, and tried to cover the cracks that were growing between them. Broken promises became common. She experienced fear more than comfort, and her heart carried the stress of living with someone losing control of their life. She was young, still figuring out who she was, yet she was handling responsibilities and emotional pain far beyond her age. There were nights when she sat alone, unsure if he was safe or if he would return. She kept hope alive longer than most people would. She believed she could help him change, that love could guide him back. But she was exhausting herself without realizing it. Over time, the weight of worry drained. She began to understand that caring for someone doesn't mean sacrificing your entire sense of self. Her heart hurt deeply, but she also knew she couldn't continue living with that much instability. After 7 years together, the breakup became inevitable. It wasn't explosive or hateful. It was a quiet, painful ending shaped by exhaustion and sadness. She loved him, but she could no longer save him. Walking away was one of the hardest decisions she ever made. She felt sorrow, relief, guilt, and heartbreak all at once. The relationship had shaped her, but it had also scarred her. Even years later, she admitted that leaving him was heartbreaking, but staying would have destroyed her. Robert later said she was a saint during those years, acknowledging the support she gave him when he was struggling the most. The breakup left her emotionally drained, and she entered the 1992 with wounds she didn't talk about openly. She needed time to heal and to rebuild herself. She focused on her work and tried to understand what a healthy relationship should feel like. She didn't want chaos anymore. She wanted stability, safety, and the kind of love that didn't hurt. Then she met Matthew Broderick, and her life began to change. Matthew was different from anyone she had dated before. Where Robert had been unpredictable, Matthew was steady. Where Robert brought chaos, Matthew brought calm. He didn't try to overwhelm her life. He fit into it naturally. Their relationship grew slowly and gently, based on trust and mutual respect. She felt safe with him, something she hadn't felt in years. He listened to her, supported her, and treated her with kindness. He didn't demand emotional rescue. He offered companionship, Their love didn't need dramatic moments to feel meaningful. It felt solid, honest, and warm. After years of emotional pain, she finally found a relationship that brought peace instead of fear. In 1997, they married in a simple, intimate ceremony with about 100 guests. Sarah wore a black dress, partly because she didn't. She wanted attention, and partly because she wanted the moment to feel personal, not like a performance. The wedding wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. It was a small promise between two people who valued what they had built together. Life after marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. Fame put pressure on both of them. Sarah's career grew rapidly, especially with Sex and the City, while Matthew preferred a quieter path in theater. Their schedules often kept them apart, and there were moments when the distance felt heavy. In 2008, a rumor about Matthew and another woman spread through tabloids. It hit their marriage hard, not because she believed it fully, but because it made her fear losing what she had worked so hard to build. The rumor hurt her deeply, but she and Matthew talked, reconnected, and chose honesty instead of anger. Their bond survived because both of them wanted it too. Becoming parents shifted everything. In 2002, they welcomed their son, James. Holding him gave Sarah a kind of peace she hadn't felt since childhood. She felt chosen, needed, and safe. Later, in 2009, they welcomed twin daughters, Marion and Tabitha, through surrogacy. Their home filled with laughter, chaos, and love. Parenthood gave them purpose. It grounded them and made their marriage stronger. Through Matthew, Sarah learned what supportive love feels like. It wasn't loud or complicated. It was steady and healing. He helped her rebuild her sense of trust, replacing old scars with new comfort. Their marriage has survived fame, rumors, exhaustion, and busy careers because they chose each other again and again, even during hard times. But even the deepest love couldn't shield her from the next loss, one that shattered her all over again. When the people who helped shape your strength begin to fade, it feels like parts of your own foundation are breaking away. For Sarah Jessica Parker, grief did not come as a single blow. It arrived twice, with painful closeness, taking from her two people who had quietly held her together through different stages of her life. The first loss was her stepfather, Paul Forst, the man who stepped into her childhood after her parents' divorce and gave her the sense of safety she had never truly had before. He wasn't loud, he wasn't dramatic, and he didn't ask for attention. He simply showed up every day, worked hard, and cared for a family that needed stability more than anything. As a child, Sarah watched him fix things in the house when they had no money for repairs. She saw him come home tired, but still willing to help with homework or prepare meals. He worked multiple jobs, sometimes leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. He made sure the children had warm clothes in winter, drove them to rehearsals, and quietly filled the gaps left by her father's absence. She remembered him wiping his hands on a cloth after repairing a broken heater, smiling even when exhaustion showed in his eyes. These small moments were the foundation of her trust in the world. He never tried to be a hero. He just did what needed to be done. And that simple consistency meant everything to a child who had known instability. When he fell ill many years later, she felt a familiar fear rising inside. The same fear she had felt as a child when life was uncertain. Watching him weaken was painful. The hospital room felt too bright and too still at the same time. Machines beeped softly, nurses moved gently, and the family gathered with heavy hearts. Sarah sat beside him, holding his hand the way he had once held hers when she was small and nervous before a performance. She watched his breathing grow slower, and in those last days, she found herself replaying every memory he had given her. Driving her to auditions, fixing her shoes, giving her advice in quiet tones, showing her what responsibility looked like. The final goodbye was quiet. There were no long speeches, just a room full of people who loved him, each absorbing the moment in their own way. Her mother cried softly, the kind of cry that comes from losing the person who shared a lifetime with you. Her siblings stood, close, holding on to each other. And for Sarah, losing Paul felt like losing the base that had always kept her steady. He had been the person who taught her what real support looked like. He had shaped her sense of family. His death left a space that nothing else could fill, but her grief did not end there. Only a year earlier, she had lost a different kind of anchor, her friend and co-star, Willie Garson. To the world, he was Stanford Blatch, Carrie's closest confidant in Sex and the City. To Sarah, he was something deeper. Their friendship began long before the show became famous. He understood her in a way few people did. He made her laugh during stressful days on set. He stood beside her during difficult moments in life. Their bond was built on trust, kindness, and honesty, and it lasted more than 20 years. What made losing him even harder was the way he carried his illness. During the filming of And Just Like That, Willie was already sick, but he didn't want anyone to worry. He filmed scenes while quietly battling cancer, hiding his pain with his usual humor and warmth. Sarah later said she noticed small signs: how he moved slower, how he sat down carefully, how his hands sometimes trembled, but he always brushed it off with a smile, telling her he was fine. She believed him because she wanted to believe him. She couldn't imagine a world without him. The day she learned he had passed away, the shock hit her deeply. She felt the kind of grief that makes time pause. She remembered all their conversations, his comforting words during stressful periods of her life, his encouragement when she doubted herself, and the way he hugged her after emotional scenes. Losing him felt like losing a piece of her past, a part of her heart that had been with her through some of the most important years of her career. It wasn't just the loss of a friend. It was the loss of a presence that had made her feel understood and supported. Experiencing two major losses so close together changed her. It made her rethink what love means, how memories shape people, and how fragile life can be. Grief reminded her that even strong people break sometimes. It showed her that healing is not a straight path. Some days she felt calm. Other days she cried unexpectedly. She began to appreciate small moments, more walking with her children, talking with her husband, cooking at home, watching her daughters laugh. These ordinary moments became precious. Losing Paul and Willie also deepened her understanding of resilience. She realized that resilience is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about learning to keep going even when your heart feels heavy. She learned to honor their memory by carrying their lessons forward. Paul's quiet strength, Willie's kindness and humor, their influence stayed with her, shaping the way she approached her work, family, and relationships. But even as she was dealing with grief privately, the world continued demanding more from her. She still had projects to complete, interviews to attend, and a public image to maintain. Fame does not pause for personal loss, and she had to balance her emotions with her responsibilities. She moved through her days, trying to stay steady for her children while also allowing herself the space to feel what she needed to feel. It was one of the hardest periods of her life, but she kept going, step by step. Yet even grief could not stop the world from demanding more of her, and she had one last chapter still to build. After all the storms Sarah Jessica Parker has lived through, what remains is not the fame, the awards, or the headlines. What remains is the woman she slowly built from every scar, from every hardship, and from every moment she had to stand up, even when she felt tired. Today, her net worth is estimated at more than $200 million. But what makes that remarkable is not the number itself. It is the fact that she came from a childhood where electricity was turned off, meals were stretched thin, and a warm home was never guaranteed. She built her entire life from the ground up, without shortcuts, without privilege, and without safety nets. Her success is not just financial, it is emotional, personal, and deeply tied to the discipline she developed long before the world ever knew her name. Her real estate journey reflects this mix of ambition and vulnerability. Each home she bought carried a story, not just a price. She and Matthew once purchased a townhouse for $19 million, poured their savings into renovations, and later had to sell it for less than they hoped. The loss hurt, not because of ego, but because financial stability meant so much to a woman who had known poverty. Their next major purchase, 2 adjoining townhouses in the West Village, totaling around $35 million, became a long and slow project filled with stress but also hope. It represented a dream she once believed she would never reach. She also held on to a simple Hamptons cottage worth about $6.5 million, a home filled with sunlight and childhood laughter. She offered it to fans for just $20 a night, not as a business move, but as a gesture of gratitude. She understood what it meant to come from nothing, and she never forgot it. Her business ventures grew from the same spirit of determination. Her fragrance, Lovely, launched in 2007, became a global bestseller. It proved that she was more than an actress. She could create something real and meaningful. Her SJP shoe collection brought in tens of millions of dollars a year, built with care and attention to quality. She took risks, created products she believed in, and built brands that reflected her taste and values. Her production company, Pretty Matches, focused on stories centered around women. Her wine label added another layer to her creative world. None of these businesses were created for quick profit. They were built slowly, thoughtfully, and with the same work ethic she learned from her stepfather, Paul. She wanted each project to mean something, and she stayed loyal to that belief. But the part of her life she protects most fiercely is her children. Her oldest, James, born in 2002, grew up watching his mother juggle fame, work, and home life. Sarah often says that James has an old soul. He is thoughtful, kind, and grounded. Her twin daughters, Tabitha and Marion, born in 2009, bring joy and color into her home. They each have different personalities, one more outgoing, one more quiet, but both are loved deeply. Sarah's role as a mother is shaped strongly by the childhood she lived through. She wants her children to feel safe, understood, and supported. She works hard to protect their privacy, give them stability, and raise them with humility. She teaches them the value of kindness and the importance of gratitude. She has often said she never wants her children to feel the fear she felt growing up. Her upbringing taught her that emotional closeness is one of the greatest gifts a parent can give. She listens to her children, guides them gently, and tries to be present in their everyday lives. She cooks meals, walks them to school when she can, and talks to them about their fears and dreams. She knows how difficult life can be, and she wants her children to feel the comfort she once longed for. Despite her wealth, she teaches them to appreciate simple things, to be polite, to work hard, and to treat others with respect. She wants them to understand the world beyond privilege. Outside of her home, Sarah gives quietly. She supports children's hospitals, arts programs for young performers, and organizations that help women rebuild their lives. She donates without needing cameras or applause. She gives because she remembers how painful it is to lack support. She remembers being a child who needed help, and she wants to offer that help to others. Her philanthropy is personal, rooted in compassion rather than publicity. As she reflects on her life now, success has taken on a different meaning for her. In her 20s and 30s, success was about making a career, finding stability, and proving herself. Today, in her 60s, success means love, health, family, and peace. She values slow mornings, conversations with her husband, the sound of her daughters laughing, and the quiet comfort of home. She understands that life is fragile, and every moment matters. She carries her grief with her, losing Paul, losing Willie, losing the people who made her stronger. But grief has also taught her to appreciate what she has left. It has softened her, made her wiser, and deepened her appreciation for simple joy. She is aging with confidence, not because the world expects it, but because she has learned to accept every stage of her life. She balances work, family, grief, and purpose with patience. She chooses projects carefully, invests in things she believes in, and refuses to chase attention. She cares more about meaning than fame. Her scars have become a part of her story, shaping her into someone resilient and compassionate. She knows that hardships do not break a person. They build depth and understanding. Her legacy is not just her shows, movies, or businesses. It is the life she built from almost nothing. It is the strength she found in the darkest moments. It is the love she shares with her children. It is the quiet generosity she offers to others. It is the understanding that rising from hardship creates a kind of wisdom that cannot be taught. And as she enters the next chapter of her life, one shaped by hard-won wisdom, fierce love, and unbroken resilience, only one question remains. What will she choose to rise toward next?